Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I'm Mary Ann, and I am the head of the Department of Hotel, Restaurant, and Institution Management. At this point, I would like to give the floor. Well, of course, I'd like to welcome everyone. Magandang umaga sa staff, sa ating faculty, students, alumni, and former deans we're told that some former deans are also on board. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. At this point, gusto ko pong ibigay yung floor kay Mark. Mark is the president of SHARP. As you know, SHARP is the official organization of the DHRIM. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you, ma'am Tomanan. So again, good morning, everyone. I'm Mark Pianilio, President of UP Society for Hotel and Restaurant Progress. So to all professors, speakers, fellow students, staffs, and guests, on behalf of UP Sharp, welcome and thank you for attending UP College of Home Economics anniversary. We have plenty of talks in store for you today, and to start us off, let us welcome again the Department Head of the Department of HRM, Ma'am Mary Antumanan, for the opening remarks. Let us give her a big round of virtual applause.
A virtual applause. Maraming salamat po at magandang umaga muli. Welcome to our webinar in celebration of the College of Home Economics 99th anniversary as a discipline come November 12, 2020. The overarching theme of our webinar is Learning from the Masters, Multi-Disciplinary Perspectives on Sustainable Development Goal 12, or Responsible Production and Consumption. You know, the concept of sustainable development was first coined in the report by the United Nations World Commission on Environment and Development, known as Our Common Future, or the Brundtland Report, which was released in 1987. It basically underscores development as meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. In essence, sustainable development is about the quality of life enjoyed by the present and future generations. This notion has evolved and gained momentum with the adoption by the United Nations of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development with 17 universal, transformative, and integrated sustainable development goals. As we celebrate our 99th anniversary, we advance the 2030 Agenda in pursuit of SDG 12. You may recall that in 2017, we in the college identified five of the global goals to support, including those related to poverty, hunger, quality education, sustainable cities, and responsible production and consumption, all of which interconnects and serves as the blueprint of our college initiatives. Our webinar is envisaged to illuminate a multidisciplinary approach to changing the way we produce and consume goods and resources towards a more sustainable future. We will learn concrete evidence of how the different subdisciplines of home economics advance the shift towards sustainable production and consumption. Finally, allow me to say that learning from the masters, or as we call it in the department, LFM, is an annual activity of the DHRIM, akin to a professor for a day program. This morning, we are joined by five masters who will share with us their knowledge and expertise, as well as their own stories of challenges and success. For sure, we will all be motivated and inspired by their great initiatives. Maraming salamat po sa inyo lahat at muli, magandang umaga, advance happy anniversary CHE Padayon. Now, at this point, I would like to give the floor to our special guest. She is the president of the University of the Philippines Home Economics Alumni Association. Join me, please, in welcoming Dr. Eleanor Malikdem. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Good morning to all of you. Good morning to Dean Shirley Guevara, to our department chairs, faculty, staff, and students. It's really a great pleasure to be invited in this particular celebration of our discipline because it's really great that what will happen, the outcome of the celebration, what will be our contribution to the needs of the Filipino family. And just to update you, or just to try to remember, that it was in 1899 that the name home economics was adopted at the Lake Placid Conference, and was then a new discipline whose basic mission is to help individuals and families improve their lives. So your theme and your project is really coincide with the particular objective of our home economics as a discipline. There is really a interconnectivity on the sustainable goals to support hunger, poverty, quality education, and sustainable cities. And you are using the multidisciplinary approach to really changing the way we will be producing and the proper consumption of goods and the resources toward a sustainable future. So in this slide, I would like to congratulate the college, all of you, for really coming up with this particular kind of project, especially in this pandemic problem. So I think the role of home economics is really great. So as a whole, the discipline will stay forever, because as long as we have the homes and families, we are in this particular kind of project that will be able to help our own future Filipino families. So again, thank you very much for the invitation and being one of your part of your celebration. Okay, good day.
Thank you, Dr. Malik Dem, and thank you, Ma'am Tumanan, for those words. So, before we continue to the rest of our program, let us have a quick icebreaker. To those who can, please go to menti.com. So that's menti.com and enter the passcode 80627. I'll flash it on the screen naman. So if you guys can go there na. Hmm, share screen. Ayan. So, Ma'am Lor, is my screen being shared naman po?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. So, everyone, please answer what is your first impression or idea to SDG 12? So we have one, sustainability, sustainable consumption. Ayan, so a lot of answers focus more on sustainability, sustainable consumption, production and consumption, mindful usage of resources, yes, and doing more with less, efficient and effective responsible consumption. What else? Economic growth. We see a lot of different answers, but a lot of them focus more on sustainability, empowered consumers, sustainable living. Okay, so I guess that's would be it. So to give us a more in-depth uh, description or introduction to what SDG 12 is, let us first introduce our moderators, Ma'am Liza Guggenheim and Ma'am Joanne Bantang. Let us give them a big round of applause.
Hello, good morning, everyone. While waiting for my partner, good morning,
Sorry,
Sage.
I can't start my video because the host has stopped it.
Lar?
Yan, I'm happy to be part of this webinar. So good morning.
Morning and happy celebration to all of us on the 99th anniversary of home economics as a discipline. Okay, I think I'm on. All right. Before I introduce our first guest speaker, I would like to make a few important announcements. Number one, the question and answer portion of the webinar will be held after all the presentations by the speakers. However, during the talks, you may field your questions by using the chat box, and your queries will be responded to immediately by the speaker concerned or during the Q&A portion. And number two announcement, at the end of the webinar, a link will be provided that you can access to submit your evaluation of the speakers, their topics, and the quality of the webinar as a whole. And your evaluation will entitle you to receive your certificate of participation in the webinar. So please take note of this. Thank you very much. So, and now, ladies and gentlemen, I am very pleased and privileged to introduce to you our first speaker. I am very proud to say that she is our very own UPBS HRA alumna. And take note, UP Sharp, she was the president of the student organization, the Society for Hotel and Restaurant Progress, during her undergraduate studies in UP. She is a staunch sustainability advocate, social entrepreneur, coffee crusader, and advocate for the empowerment of women through business. Ever since her graduation, she has started many businesses, and among them are a coffee shop chain operation, a Filipino quick service restaurant, a farm-to-table restaurant, and a natural and organic store called Eco Store, which she started in 2008, way before other green businesses came about in the Philippines. She also co-founded Great Women Showroom and Cafe, which now plans to expand to the ASEAN region. And she was the chair of the Women's Business Council of the Philippines and the ASEAN Women Entrepreneurs Network. She's also the founder of the Philippine chapters of International Women's Coffee Alliance, the Women Corporate Directors, and Slow Food Manila. She now also serves as the counselor for the Slow Food International Congress representing Southeast Asia. She's also president and co-chair of the Philippine Coffee Board Incorporated, a member of the ASEAN Coffee Federation. Ladies and gentlemen, a big warm welcome to Ms. Pasita Chit Juan.
Care amiche e cari amici di Terra Madre, quest'anno la crisi pandemica ci costringe a dover realizzare il nostro evento non più nella sede di Torino, ma in ogni angolo del pianeta. Questo sarà un appuntamento interessante, anche perché questo virus ci sta ponendo delle questioni alle quali noi tutti dobbiamo rispondere. È l'opportunità di un cambiamento profondo che noi dobbiamo realizzare, partendo da quelle che sono le tematiche della terra e dell'ambiente, avendo cura che i nostri comportamenti siano conseguenti. Vi invito tutti a essere creativi e a sviluppare le tematiche, che sono le tematiche classiche del nostro movimento, ma che sono avvalorate in questo momento di crisi che necessita un cambio di paradigma per l'economia, un cambio di paradigma nei confronti della sostenibilità. Noi dobbiamo operare su 3 livelli, un discorso di gestione dell'acqua, una gestione dell'aria, una gestione dei suoli e quindi coniugare i nostri interventi con creatività per fare in modo che si discuta Si discute delle montagne, dei mari, della salute delle persone e nello stesso tempo della capacità di pensare a un'alimentazione che non sia disastrosa come quella che questo sistema alimentare ci consegna. Chiedo a tutti di fare in modo che questa edizione di Terra Madre diventi la più bella di sempre. Innanzitutto perché durerà 6 mesi e darà l'opportunità di svolgersi in ogni angolo del pianeta e di coinvolgere moltissime persone. E secondariamente perché diventa la preparazione per un congresso di slow food che cambierà alle radici il nostro modo di essere presenti nel mondo. Da questo punto di vista chiedo grande fantasia, idee nuove e progetti nuovi che possano diventare gambe per il nostro movimento e non solo, che possano essere d'esempio anche per altri. Grazie a tutti.
Good morning. Good
Morning,
morning.
Chit.
Yeah,
Morning.
I can't seem to start my video. Okay, start my video, sinabi. Mahirap talaga tong ano, no?
Live, no?
Talagang live and
Okay.
virtual at the same time.
Yeah.
And you might be wondering why I'm not sharing my screen yet. I thought that after the beautiful introduction of Lisa, I thought she was introducing somebody else actually. But Lisa, thank you for that. And of course, good morning to our Dean, Shirley Guevara, Dr. Malik Dem,
Morning.
Lisa Guggenheim, and our other moderator, Miss Bantang, and of
Morning.
course, Mary Ann, who's been with me on Facebook, Messenger, email, etc.
Thank you. Making
But I'm
kulit,
so
ano?
happy. I'm so happy to be part of this and looking back and then to be also introduced by our sharp president. I cannot help but look back to my days at the college. And so I've been writing, sentimentally about UP in my Facebook posts. And don't worry, Mary Ann, I will keep to the time. If I know you're saying, oh my God, she's going to talk for 3 days, but I will
Thank
try to share my screen and really swing through it, because what I really want is for everyone to understand what do we mean by sustainable consumption and production, no? And this is all really tied up to slow food. I will not bore you with a lot of data, but really to, ayan, thank you na, you see? Okay. So let me go back to, hindi ako sanay kasi sa virtual, but we try so hard, no? And you practically saw already that really it's all tied up to SDG 12, sustainability. And that's what, the theme of our talk today, because of climate change and our food choices. So biodiversity is really threatened because of the food choices we have. But what we really need is to hinge our food choices, whether you're the consumer or you're the producer, to good food, masarap, clean food, free of pesticides and chemicals, and fair food. Fair to the consumer when we buy it, and fair to the producer or the farmer. So briefly, I showed you a video to put you in the mood of slow food, which is started in Italy by that man who was speaking in Italian with the English subtitles, Carlo Petrini, in 1986. And really in Manila, what we did is to connect, is we inserted slow food. We were invited in Madrid Fusion, Manila. In Negros, we also have the Negros Island Summit. And we have communities around the country in Negros, Kalinga, Panay, Pangasinan, and Cebu, which they call themselves Sugbo. Or you can form a convivium. So it's never too late for anyone who believe in the same principles of good, clean, and fair food to put up a chapter in your area. And if you go to slowfood.com, it's a non-profit, it's a grassroots movement. You can choose Manila to be with us, or you can choose to form your own chapter. Look at these beautiful tomatoes. These are heirloom species that some of them we don't see anymore. So what we're doing is trying to preserve and trying to reintroduce these heirloom varieties through pre-COVID, we would have stands by the Department of Agriculture. This would be in Turin, in Italy, where we see the rest of the world showing us their heirloom varieties, and you will be gladly surprised. Uy, may rice din sila. Uy, may corn din sila, It promotes farm-to-table cooking. So, the shorter the chain, the better. So here when we got to Turin, it's every other year, and except this year where we're doing it virtually, people get to taste our champurrado, our adobo, and they say, hey, something is familiar, yet it's not, So it connects the world. That's Margarita Forest there. Not a very full picture of her. So we also respect the seasonality of ingredients, where a strawberry tastes like a strawberry and does not taste like a cucumber when we force it to be grown every month of the year when it shouldn't be. So we should follow nature. And then we catalog endangered species. If you go to slowfood.com, go to Arc of Taste, you will see the 60 species we have listed and more to come, of rice, of grains, of chocolate, of coffee. This is rice from Kalinga, for example. When we used to go in person to Italy every other year, we would have the display of all our heirloom varieties. This is Philippine Criollo cacao. Of course, Barako, which I am such a crusader of. And then Adlay, and Kadios, which you find in Kadios Baboy Langka, and all these souring ingredients from all over the country. So what we're trying to do is trying to fix what I call the broken food system, because sometimes, just to give you an example of broken, a farmer will grow corn, but not for his food. It is food for the pig that he has to butcher to eat it. So it's not right. What you should grow is something that you can eat, and not to feed someone or feed an animal and then butcher it. Slow food is also not slow cooking. A lot of people say, slow food, yan yung crock pot. Yan. Well, part of it is really cooking things slowly and not fast, because like tinola, the reason why we cook tinola so long is because the chicken is a free-range chicken, which we usually find in the farms. Thus, we have stews. That's how our forefathers addressed the toughness of the chicken, for example. But I'm sure other speakers will delve into other ways of revisiting our food traditions so that we will go back to a responsible kind of production and consumption. Slow food is also not a method of cooking over slow fire. Okay? Although that helps sa pagpapalambot and all that, slow food is a grassroots movement if you believe in real food. And real food really is good food, clean food, and fair food. So, I'll be entertaining your questions later. I promise to keep to the time, but slow food is an international movement that all of us can belong to. So, what we can do to contribute to SDG 12: sustainable consumption and production, and we can use slow food as our guiding principle. Thank you very much, and I hope I kept to time while giving you my thoughts and ideas about slow food. Thank you very much, and
Right.
good morning.
Thank you, Miss Chituan. It's really nice to see now that it is easier to identify and buy sustainably sourced ingredients na in cities or urban areas. I think slow food is practiced in many rural provinces, like in my experience in the province, though it is not yet the term used then. And it's nice that conscious and active campaign for slow food in urban areas or the metros is
Mhm.
continuously growing. And thanks to people behind these movements, such as our speaker, Ms. Chituan. Thank you very much po. At this point, we proceed to our next speaker. Dave is our youngest speaker in this webinar. He's a student here in UP and an inspiring nutritionist dietitian from our college. He is the Vice President for External Affairs of the Philippine Association of Nutrition Alpha Chapter, Pan Alpha. He is an environmental advocate, the founder of the Sustainable Gardener PH, and a member of the Youth Green Educator of Green Education Philippines, an organization that aspires to empower the Filipino youth through environmental education and green networking. Growing up, he has been exposed to the effects of environmental degradation and capitalism and the challenges to Filipinos' access to nutritious food. His love for the environment is sparked by a will and yearning to serve the country and the future generations. He believes that sustainability promotes stronger livelihoods as well as lives. His Sustainable Gardener is a one stop shop from gardening tips to gardening needs while promoting eco friendly practices. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow home economists, I present to you Mr. Dave Louis Ang, who will talk about sustainable gardening.
So, good morning, everyone. I'm just gonna share my screen. Uh, there. All right. So, good morning. Thank you, Miss Mayan, and good morning, members of the committee, fellow panelists, the community, and the future generations. So, thank you so much for having me here in this webinar. So, today I'm going to tell you about sustainable ways how to grow your own food. And by sustainable, I want to make it clear that it means for the planet, to benefit the planet, and also to benefit the future generations, but also to literally sustain the effort you are going to put into this. So before we begin, I want you to think about where your food comes from. Like, where do you buy your food? So if you live in a city like me, you probably rely on supermarkets or groceries nearby to get your food. Now, think about what would happen if the food chain suddenly broke down. If, say, a natural disaster hit or transportation of food was unavailable for some time. Not to mention, Philippines is a country prone to natural disasters due to our warm ocean waters. So the Philippines actually have warm equatorial power storms. So it can make at least 20 typhoons a year. And our country also rests on the Pacific's earthquake and volcano ring of fire. So basically, we are also prone to earthquake and volcanic eruptions. Eh, and according to the United Nations on June 2020, there is an impending global food emergency due to COVID-19. And when we say food emergency, It means that people are unable to meet their basic survival needs, or there are serious and immediate threats to human life and well-being. And we can say that the global pandemic gave most people anxieties of food shortage. And due to the lockdown, most companies have limited access when it comes to manpower and transportation of food. And people in the low-income communities heavily relies with the donations. And lastly, aside from those, hunger isn't simply the lack of access to food. It's the lack of access to the right nutrients. Because in order to thrive, we need a wide range of foods providing a variety of essential health benefits. So just because na kumakain tayo every day doesn't mean that we are already healthy. According to UNICEF on October 2019, Filipino children are increasingly suffering from poor diets and eating unhealthy food. That's why we have this concept called urban gardening. So when we say urban gardening, this is the process of all types of growing plants in an urban environment. So you see these pictures here. These are all practices of urban gardening, and it might look intimidating. But urban gardening is not about having a big space. It's not about having many plants, and it's not about the aesthetics. So no matter how small your area is, or no matter what plants you use, urban gardening is all about planning and cultivation of plants in an urban area. And when we say gardening, it's about maintaining and propagating these plants. So there are actually a lot of types of gardening. So there's container gardening, there's indoor, there's community gardening, green roof gardening, and there's sustainable gardening. So this type of gardening is the one I practice. So you might be wondering what's the difference of sustainable gardening from ordinary gardening. So basically, sustainable gardening promotes gardening in a smart and eco-friendly way. By practicing sustainable gardening, we practice good environmental stewardship. That means we carefully buy or use products for our garden in being self-sufficient or sustainable. And you use only a small amount of resources to grow natural, healthy plants, making it eco-friendly. And so actually, this part will be teaching you how to grow your own food. Like it's a step-by-step process. So on a personal note, here are some sustainable practice that I want to show everyone that I do in my garden. So first, these are samples of fertilizers, organic fertilizers. So normally, fertilizers are used for improving nutrients for plants. And since farming mainly depends on the growth of a crop, we want to add fertilizers to our soil. However, when it comes to sustainability, we would want to use organic fertilizers. So when we say organic fertilizers, they are derived from animal matter, from vegetable matters, or crop residues. So gumagamit sila ng mga microorganisms in the soil to break the fertilizer down and make them available to the plant. So basically, the soil benefits from this process, and the soil gives the nutrients to the plants. However, for chemical fertilizers, we can also call this as water soluble. So they are non-organic minerals in concentrated form that are readily available to the plant. So kapag synthetic yung ginamit natin, it feeds the plant directly. So ini-skip na niya yung process of feeding the soil and then to the plant. So directly sa plant. So kapag organic, nutrients are slowly released and is used for long-term purposes. Unlike chemical fertilizers, mabilis siyang ma-absorb ng plant, but you have to buy this product regularly since it does not last long. And so next na practice na ginagawa ko is um, pesticides. So usually, I would find some pests on my garden. So there are mites, rats, snails, and other pests that can seriously damage your flowers, fruits, or vegetables. So these creatures often attack garden in swarms. So while many chemicals are proven and effective, they are unsafe to use for the environment and for people to consume the produce. So ang chemical ang pesticides parang concept lang din siya ng fertilizer. So it's a slow release. So homemade organic pesticides last longer um, than synthetic ones. So this is just one of the many examples. So ang ginagamit ko is chili and garlic. So for every 1 cup of chili and 1 cup of garlic, so you have to shred it. You add 2 cups of water, and you can add the volume. So yeah, so that's how you make an organic pesticide. But there is a lot more other pesticides found in the internet. And then lastly, I have this rainwater catcher sa garden. So for me, it is one of the most important things in having a sustainable garden. But of course, it is optional. Since water is an essential requirement for plants, and most plants need water every day, instead of using water in your faucet, you can use rainwater instead of using tap water. And also, rainwater is better than tap water since tap water is treated with chlorine. And since rainwater is a soft water, it may contain nitrogen that is essential for plant growth. So for soil conditioners, we actually have a lot of top types of soils, but these are the ones that I use for my garden for the growth of my plants. So I use vermicast. So for seed starters, I used vermicast and cocoa fiber. So vermicast is an organic fertilizer. This is for the nutrients, and cocoa peat galing siya sa bunot ng niyog. So it's a shredded coconut fiber. So for every 1 cup of vermicast, you can add 2 cups of cocoa fiber. So cocoa fiber is for the moisture content. Since if you're gonna start with seeds, in order for them to germinate, you would want a lot of moisture in your soil. And so these are samples of my plants. So these are basil seeds. I started with them, and then after 2-3 months, there you have it. It's grown a lot. And so next one is drain. So there are types of plants that likes to have a well drained soil. So you would want to add garden soil. This is for texture, vermicast for the nutrients, cocoa peat for moisture, and perlite. So on perlite, these are really small rocks. This is for the drainage of your soil. So these are some of the plants that I use with a drained soil. So before, yung leaves niya, it's being nasisira na siya because it's being overwatered. But then when I changed the potting soil to a drained one, and the leaves are so much better. And then lastly is the produce. This is also known for an all-purpose mix. And so ang pinagkaiba lang niya is carbonized rice hull. So ang carbonized rice hull, it's the partial burning of IPA. So ang CRH, this it repels pathogens and it attracts good microbes. And so I'll just show you my garden where I usually do my gardening. And so I have ampalaya and eggplant. Usually I would at least have 2 to 3 kilos of harvest every week. And I also have sitaw, watermelon, and there's also eggplant there. Okra, and then this is also another variety of watermelon. So I'm not sure what kind of variety they are, but yeah, they're different. So for plant care, we need to take notice, or these are the important factors when we are going to take care of plants. So the first one is sunlight and drainage. So let's say kangkong. So when we are going to plant kangkong, they like less drainage. They like their area muddy, filled with water. And they only need partial sunlight around 4 hours approximate to produce more leaves and not to burn them. While bell pepper, and they like to have a good drainage. They don't like draining themselves with water. And when it comes to sunlight, they like plenty of sunlight. So that's why it's very important to know the sunlight and drainage requirement of each plant. And then next is temperature. And so merong mga plants um, na gusto sa malamig, gusto sa mainit, like let's say strawberries, diba? Usually they grow in cold temperatures. And so we also need to know the temperature requirement of the plant. If suitable ba siya here in Manila, or are they grown in cool weathers? And next is water. And so ang common misconception ng mga people is watering their plants. So usually ang iniisip ng mga tao ay there's a scheduled requirement for watering their plants. But you have to know the water requirement of each plant. So let's say I have this monstera. So ang monstera, they don't like being watered daily. They like to have a dry soil. So usually I just water it once a week. And sometimes nga umaabot pa ng 2 weeks. So you have to check the soil if it's still moist or if it's still wet. But if it's already dry, that's the time you water. So wala talagang specific time of watering your plants. You really have to check the soil itself. And eventually by time, parang magiging routine mo na lang siya, or like you would eventually know when to water your plants. And next naman, ayan, tomatoes. So tomatoes they don't also like too much water. So they like to have dry feet. So if you water your tomatoes too much, ang mangyayari, hindi siya mag-produce ng fruit and they will slowly die. So you really have to be careful when it comes to watering your plants. And so next is pruning. So ang pruning, this is actually one of the hardest when I started gardening. So when we prune, so let's say again, so sa left side we have a basil, and sa right side we have an eggplant. So these are flowers. So once a basil plant grows flowers, the leaves start to lose its good flavor because nutrients are focused on two parts. So what you want to do is you want to remove the flowers of the basil para yung nutrients niya ma-redirect dun sa mga leaves in order for them to produce that good flavor. And dun sa eggplant naman, ayan, actually, well, for me, walang kwenta yung flowers niya, although it produces seeds. But, ayun, if you want your produce to grow faster, you would want to cut out, or like you would want to prune these flowers. And so lastly, it's harvesting. So ang harvesting, it actually requires art and practice because a large portion of your crops can be lost due to improper methods. So you have to know when is the right time to harvest your produce, or if it's too early or if it's too late. Because if it's too late, ang mangyayari is mabubulok siya and it can be infested with insects or pests. And if it's too early naman, sayang yung growth niya. So like hindi mo siya makakain in its full potential. Ayan. So by practicing sustainable urban gardening, we strengthen food security and we are able to build sustainable cities and communities by growing our own food in a smart and eco-friendly way. And before COVID-19, the world continues to use natural resources unsustainably. Our carbon footprints are high enough that it may destroy our planet within the next 20 years. So we can also see here, in the context of the food supply chains, at least 13.8% of food is lost in supply chains. So pag-harvest mo, pag-transport, storage, and processing, not all of those produce ay napupunta dun mismo sa market. So in this process, at least 13.8% ay ang nawawala. So actually malaki na yung 13.8%. So by gardening sustainably, we are able to produce our own food while we practice environmental stewardship. Thus, we are able to help the climate crisis we are in, and we become advocates for responsible consumption and production by reducing our carbon footprints. And so, thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dave Louis Ang, for a very informative and inspiring talk on sustainable gardening. I, for one, I am very inspired. I'm no green thumb, and I'm sure that your sharing is very helpful to a lot of our audience. And thank you for showing us a smart and eco-friendly way to grow our food and our plants, and also emphasizing the good environmental stewardship towards self-sufficiency. So thank you very much. We'll make sure that we will share that PPT with everybody. Thank you. So now I would like to present our next speaker. She's a professor of food science and the former head of the Department of Food Science and Nutrition of the College of Home Economics in UP Diliman. She earned her PhD in public health, major in food science from Curtin University in Western Australia in 2015. And she earned her master's in food science and BS food technology degrees from the University of the Philippines in Diliman. She's currently the principal investigator of the Food Application and Sensory Lab at UP Diliman and had occupied several administrative assignments in the college and the university. She teaches food science and nutrition courses both in the graduate and undergraduate programs. And in 2017, she was awarded Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture Professorial Chair grant for her paper entitled The Philippine Food Systems, Challenges and Opportunities in the 21st Century. She was recently awarded as a chartered scientist, registered sensory scientist, and a fellow of the Institute of Food Science and Technology in the United Kingdom, due mainly to her accomplishments both as a food scientist and sensory scientist. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to talk on food innovation for sustainable consumption and production. Please welcome Professor Casiana Blanca Villarino.
Okay, thank you, Ma'am Gugi. Let me just share my presentation. Okay, so thank you again, Ma'am Gugi, for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. So from Bulacan. Okay, so let me present the outline of my talk today. First, I will briefly discuss SCP, although it has been discussed by our previous speakers in the context of food. And then it will be followed by one of the current motivators of SCP, or Sustainable Consumption and Production, which has brought havoc to our lives, to all of us, and that is COVID-19. I will introduce some trends in food innovation for sustainable consumption and production through Clash Foods. And lastly, I will present a case in point, which is kamote, a product we have developed in our lab, which we believe is a good example of a Clash food. Okay, so we probably often relate the word sustainability or sustainable development to the environment. However, sustainable development has three pillars. It involves the social, economic, and these two factors or pillars contribute to the environmental aspects of sustainable development. So Dr. Tumanan already mentioned about the UN Sustainable Development Goals, which has 17 global goals with a total of 169 targets. And we are all here to discuss SDG 12, which is responsible consumption and production. I want to highlight the important aspects of SDG 12's targets as it relates to the food systems or our food system, including efficient use of our natural resources involved in the food system, reduction of food waste by prevention, recycling, and reuse, reduction of release of chemicals to resources involved in the food system, such as air, water, and soil. So it was in the video earlier by Ma'am Sheet, the Italian guy, I forgot the name, sorry, he emphasized the management of our air, water, and soil. And then lastly, the use of technology to push us towards shift us our patterns to sustainable consumption and production. So my talk will focus on these facets of SDG 12. Okay, so first let me give a background. I'm sure most of us know why why COVID-19 happened. But I want to relate this why there's a tremendous need for us to shift towards sustainable consumption and production. So COVID-19 is a zoonotic disease, which means it was transmitted from animals to humans. So without this transmission route, SARS-CoV-2, which is the virus responsible for COVID-19, would not have presented itself as COVID-19. However, we are giving coronaviruses such as SARS-CoV-2 more opportunities to leap from animals to us humans. Population growth, economic growth, urbanization led to our unsustainable consumption and production. Deforestation for urban areas, for agricultural and industrial uses has reduced overall space for wildlife and degraded natural buffers between us humans and animals. Climate change caused variations in temperature and humidity affecting the survival of microbes. Rapid changes to habitat due to unusual weather events such as heat, drought, flooding, or wildfires are too rapid to allow ecosystems to balance sudden spikes in populations of group species such as mosquitoes, which can serve as vectors for emerging diseases. Our demand for dairy and meat products has led to the expansion of uniform cropland and intense livestock farming in rural areas and nearby cities. Livestock often serve as a bridge between wildlife and us human or human infections, meaning pathogens may be passed from wildlife, wild animals to livestock and to us humans. With the increased intensive farming and overuse of antimicrobial drugs in both animals and humans or people, pathogens are becoming more resistant to the very medications that might have been effective in treating zoonotic disease. So all of these examples really calls us to shift towards sustainable consumption and production. So I introduced Crash Food. So this is an acronym that I coined, which represents descriptors for foods for and beyond SCP or sustainable consumption and production. So you will notice that these terms are in black and bold and white and italicized fonts. The words in black are the qualities that I will focus on, while the characteristics in white are fundamental qualities of any food product that consumers look for, especially at this time of the pandemic. Convenient, creative, affordable, acceptable, safe, and healthy. And SMART is actually related to the use of artificial intelligence and other technologies, which I will discuss in more detail later. Okay, so let's start with C, which is clean. So the first C is the use of clean label or clean label. So what is clean label? So it's actually related to what Ma'am Cheat mentioned earlier, is the use or clean food. Okay, so clean label can be defined as the use of few ingredients as possible, which ingredients that are recognizable or consumers recognize and think of as wholesome. And these are probably ingredients that consumers might use at home. These are easy to recognize ingredients and no artificial ingredients or synthetic chemicals. You can look at clean label in terms of ingredient sourcing if they are sustainable and if there are no ethical issues involved when you source these ingredients. And it may also refer to the use of organic ingredients. Another C is the circular economy or the consideration of circular economy. I'm sure some of you have heard of circular food systems or circular economy. So circular economy, compared to the linear straight scheme from production to disposal, is the use of old products to produce new products. And as much as possible, everything is reused, remanufactured, or as a last resort, recycled into a raw material or used as a source of energy. You can also view circular economy in terms of the integration of local food systems. So Dave mentioned about sustainable gardening, which is a form of a local food system, and even slow food is, or the farm to fork idea is a local food system. So meaning the products are manufactured as close as possible to the source. Speaking of local food systems, Martinez gave or presented these benefits to the local economy, health benefits from improved nutrition as the produce do not have to travel far, and thus prevent the possibility of adding to food waste. You reduce the food insecurity in the community, and of course, in terms of environmental impact, it will less, or there's less emission of greenhouse gases due to less food miles and energy use. The importance of local food systems has been highlighted by COVID-19, and of course with other issues such as the African swine flu and the avian flu, due to the broken supply chain, especially during the lockdown. So it led to weak growth and low income of producers, high cost of logistics and storage, and high cost of nutritious food. Okay, so let's discuss the A part of CLASH, which is artificial intelligence. So there's a buzzword now for probably in the past 2 or 3 years that data is the new oil. Thus, the emergence of AI, or should I say the re-emergence or enforcement of AI in almost all industries. So when you say AI, it is related to terms like machine learning, deep learning, robotics, blockchain technology, and other technologies that are making our lives easier. And the food industry is a fast-growing segment when it comes to the use of AI. You can see in this infographic that in Europe alone, there are 30,000 plus robots used, which can include machines like burger flippers. And a burger flipper is said to assemble a burger or 400 burgers in 1 hour. It can be used in food sorting, food safety compliance, creating new products, creating new flavor combos, managing the supply chain, and of course, reduce food waste, which is one of the targets of SDG. And of course, agriculture as part of SCP, or the food system, also benefits from AI in pest control, boosting crop yield, better crop selection, providing more information to our farmers using chatbots, and the use of robots for higher yields. And this will benefit not only the consumers, but the farmers. So the last letter is sustainable. So food innovation towards sustainable consumption and production involves all stages of the food system, from production to disposal. So let's look at production. So when you assess, when scientists assess the sustainability of food, they look into these 3 factors: the emission of greenhouse gases, the land use, and the use of water. So it can be seen from this table that livestock and poultry production emit more greenhouse gases and use more land, while some plant sources may use more water. In terms of for consumption, I already mentioned that our diets, or our demand for meat and livestock or dairy, has caused catastrophic damage to planet. So this was the headline of the Eat Lancet report. So I'm not sure if you've heard of the Eat Lancet report. So this report was released in 2019 by the Eat Lancet Commission. And according to the scientists involved in the Eat Lancet report, particularly by Dr. Willett, so Dr. Willett is a professor of medicine at Harvard University. So they said that transformation to healthy diets by 2050 will require substantial dietary shifts. Global consumption of fruits, vegetables, nuts, and legumes will have to double, and consumption of foods such as red meat and sugar will have to be reduced by more than 50%. A diet rich in plant-based foods and with fewer animal source food confers both improved health and environmental benefits. And they call this diet as the flexitarian diet. Okay, so this report, the Eat Lancet report, may be one of the triggers why there was a boom in plant-based foods with specific focus on non-animal protein sources. When you type, or which I did, plant-based foods in Google, you will have greater than 3 billion hits. Billion, mind you. I just clicked images in Google, and these are few of those that I found. Of course, we have the meat category. I'm sure you've heard of Impossible Burger or Beyond Meat. And then we have the plant milk, and then we have the cheese, plant-based cheese. I did not even show here yogurt, and then eggs from plants and seafoods. And then aside from plant sources, alternative proteins, which are cell-based, I'm sure you've heard of lab meat or lab milk, and then of course microproteins and insects even are gaining traction in the food industry. When we talk about processing and packaging, you can consider emerging technologies to make the food system sustainable. Use of edible packaging instead of the traditional packaging materials such as plastic. Use of non-thermal technologies such as high-pressure processing. And then, of course, we need to consider the use of renewable resources in processing such as solar, wind, and water. Okay, and then the last stage of the food system is the disposal. And in the disposal stage, we need to consider as an innovation, food waste valorization. So here are some examples of few examples of what they call edible upcycling, a form of food waste valorization. So like Regrained uses water from beer processing to produce flour they call Super Grain Plus, and they convert this to protein bars, protein chips, and other snack products. Toast Ale is a beer made from unsold or stale bread. And then Rubies and Rubble processes surplus fruits and vegetables into bottled products like tomato relish or pear chutney. And then Forager are chips made from scraps collected from smoothie shops. Okay, let me emphasize the importance of the fundamental characteristics of food products for and beyond SCP or sustainability. Convenient and creative, affordable and acceptable, safe and healthy. And if we form the acronym, I'm sure you can see from this slide, it equates to CASH, which pertains to both the social and economic pillars of sustainability, which I presented earlier. And before I end my talk, I would like to let me discuss briefly a case in point of food innovation for SCP. Kamote is a ready-to-drink sweet potato leaf extract beverage, which we optimize in our lab with my co-inventors, Assistant Professor Abigail S. Ruscha, Ms. Fredeline Gascon, and Mr. John Carlo Aningat. We are all from the College of Home Economics, Department of Food Science and Nutrition, through the funding of the DOST T-shirt. Kamote contains 3+1 ingredients, which are all natural and sourced locally with high amounts of polyphenolics. And these are reported to have antioxidant properties. It has calcium, iron, and potassium, and vitamin C, and has fewer calories versus compared to 100% pineapple juice. The color can range. So these are the colors of our product. Can range from peach to bright red color, depending on the sweet potato leaf variety. So we use inubi and red. And the color is due to the anthocyanins present in the leaves, which can turn from brown or greenish colors to bright colors in the presence of acid. Based on our initial market survey involving 400 kids and adults, they loved our products due to the color and unique flavor of the beverage. The used leaves can be utilized as animal feed, fertilizer, or source of natural colorant. The product adds value to a lowly commodity, of course, kamote leaves, and thus can add income to our sweet potato farmers. Raw material is sustainable, being a plant source, and the leaves can regrow in a week. Based on our study, we were able to use leaves from the same stores or stocks 3 to 4 times to produce kamote. And we produced or developed 11 variants of kamote, and some of these were already licensed to FreshQ, which is a small-scale beverage company. They source their leaves from their own farm, which can be a model for local food systems or even circular economy. And these are the references I used for my presentation, and thank you for listening.
thank you very much, Ma'am Blanca. And ayan, thank you very much, Ma'am Blanca, for that very informative talk. So, hello everyone, it's me again. I hope you're still doing well. So, let's have a quick break and we can have another icebreaker. So, again, please go to menti.com, that's menti.com, and use the code 530035. Again, that's 530035 and answer the question. So the question is, wait, hmm, here. So the question is, how are you going to manage your resources well at home? So while you answer, um, let me read on some of the perspectives on SDG 12 that came from our very own staff from Home Economics. So, according to Ms. Melissa Gabriel Siena, SDG 12 emphasizes the deeper role of consumers and food producers, manufacturers, towards one of the most pressing global concerns, which is food security. To ensure food security, food producers, manufacturers need to ensure safe and quality food produced through sustainable farming and manufacturing processes, while consumers at their end should be able to make healthy and wise food choices, making sure that during consumption, food quality and safety is preserved, and at the same time, unnecessary food wastage is prevented. Yeah, so Miss Melissa got the gist of SDG 12 quite covered. So next would be from Miss Jimda Alicante. So she's a personal service part of the personnel service section. So she said that for this present situation because of COVID-19 pandemic, I see two major factors affecting our country. First is the poverty due to unemployment, and second is human health. We should ensure the proper sanitation for all. So yes, given the current pandemic, we should utilize the concepts of SDG 12 so that we could not only cope with the current pandemic, but also help other people. And lastly, from Sir Limuel Lectura from the Dean's Office, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals has been a baseline and platform for countries around the world to solve various pressing issues while assuring a sustainable and better future for everyone and for the next generations. The SDG 12, responsible consumption and production, is very timely in our current crisis. Advocacy for a systematic, safe, and responsible food production and production of food, water, and energy is important to make sure that we do not compromise the resources of the future generations. We produce not only to consume, but also reproduce to save our future consumption. Lastly, responsible consumption can also mean offering and sharing our resources to those in need. So that's from our staff. So thank you very much. So here, how are you going to going to the answers? How are you going to manage your resources well at home? So a lot has answered: plan and prioritize, plan, implement, monitor, use both sides of the paper. Yes, very practical. Buy less. Iwas 11/11 sale. Yes, to those na nag-aabang for the 11/11 sale. Sabay-sabay tayong mag-abang ng 11/10 for 11/11. Do SWOT, implement, control, plan, implement, evaluate, produce food as bonding, planning, and inventory. And of course, the main answer would be proper planning. So yeah, so like I guess from everyone, our main perspective would be focusing more on how do we plan and how do we look ahead on how do we consume. So I guess we could go next to our
Okay. Thank you, Mark. And
speaker.
thank you once again, Professor Blanca Villarino. I'm reminding the attendees that you could also share your questions in the Q&A box. You may want to address specific questions to specific speakers as well. Our next speaker is our former colleague from Fundico teacher Aya. Ms. Zareka Oropilia is a BSFOCB alumna. She graduated cum laude and she has taught undergrad and preschool classes here in CHE. She was awarded an Erasmus Mundus Scholarship for an international master's in early childhood education and care. This is a joint program of Oslo Metropolitan University, University of Gothenburg, Technical University Dublin, and University of Malta. She has managed operations in Kidzania, if you're familiar with Kidzania, an international role play facility for children and their families in Manila. Currently, she is based in Bergen, Norway, as a PhD research fellow in the Western Norway University of Applied Sciences, where she is also part of the Kindergarten Knowledge Center for Systemic Research on Diversity and Sustainable Futures. That was a mouthful. But Kindno Center. So it's about 3 a.m. in Teacher Aya's place, and Teacher Aya's talk for today is entitled Intergenerational and Multidisciplinary Approach Towards Sustainable Futures for Children and Families. Teacher Aya.
Good morning, honored guests, esteemed faculty, colleagues, and students. I'm very honored and excited for this opportunity to share and open up a dialogue on how we can work towards sustainable futures together. I am Zareka Arapilla, also sometimes known as Teacher Aya. I am an alumna of and have been with the Department of Family Life and Child Development some years ago. And let me share my screen with you. Currently, I'm based in Bergen, Norway as a research fellow in Kindno Center, Kindergarten Knowledge Center for Systemic Research on Diversity and Sustainable Features. It is for this reason that I am pre-recording, because it would be 3 or 4 in the morning here for the duration of the program. So that I would not wake up the entire house by lessening my talking time, I have chosen to pre-record. For this, I apologize and thank you for your understanding. On the other hand, I do plan to be with you in Zoom for the entire program. For this morning, this is the outline of my presentation. We will start out with addressing the SDG 12 to identify how the FLCD discipline in particular can contribute to the discourse. We will then move on to reflecting on what kind of consumers do we want to become as a jump-off point to the approaches I would like to suggest and contribute towards sustainable futures for children and their families. And that is through intergenerational solidarity and multidisciplinary processes for research and development. I would like to end by posing some challenges to FLCD, CHE, and the academe in general. In keeping with today's theme that focuses on SDG 12 and reflecting on how FLCD can contribute to the cause, identifying products and services children and families consume on a daily basis is requisite. Apart from food, clothes, shelter, furnishing, and travel, play and learning artifacts, materials, and environments will come to mind. Children and families consume toys, digital tools and apps that come with it, craft supplies, as well as playgrounds and educational entertainment spaces like theme parks or themed attractions, zoos, etc. will also come to mind. Having identified these, there comes a need to reflect on the key elements of sustainable consumption and production. These elements have been identified by the United Nations Environment Programme and represented in the graphic on the right side to help us reflect as consumers. Examples of questions we can ask are the following. Who are these products and services for? How are they conceptualized and produced? Where were they produced? How will you be able to gain access? How will it get to you? Who is the target market? Are these products and services single-use or multifunctional? How are these utilized, stored, and disposed? How much waste will we be generating after its use? By just asking these questions, we take on a more active role in the production and consumption cycle. We become active consumers by demanding products and services that we know would support the sustainable futures that we want. Something that we also have to keep in mind is that these products and services were produced and advertised in a way that would speak to a targeted audience. From a mostly marketing business and economic point of view, this is what referred to as success by design and not by chance. I have heard this a great number of times in my past life of managing operations of a themed educational entertainment attraction for children and families. We have been trained by a Singaporean organization called Service Quality Center, or SQC, that has also trained manpower of Changi Airport, Resorts World Sentosa, which includes Universal Studios, Ion Orchard, and Paragon. They helped us enhance our processes and helped us develop what we called our signature service experience. This took into account not just our business model, but also how we engaged with our visitors, our posture, our facial expressions, our hand gestures, our appearance even, and our language. All verbals and nonverbals are included in our systems and design. And there are also studies examining children's purchasing power and their influence on family spending. While I cannot discuss the whole content of these studies in a nutshell, by reading through these two examples that are shown on the screen, we can surmise that young children have purchasing power that businesses explicitly utilize for marketing. They have very explicitly stated as a business implication that older children have higher incomes directly under their control in both nations. This particular study is comparing the US and Japan. They then say this finding raises the possibility of directly targeting older children and the potential of using a moving target approach to segmentation and positioning. Early on, parents would be prime targets, even for children-related products. Later in life, children or later in children's life cycle, they could become the primary target of marketing efforts. And this can be found in the page 872. On the other hand, there are also existing research as early as 1998 that are done in the context of building young consumers' information processing skills in order to help them make informed dietary choices. For example, in this article, such as those that are available for consumption in the marketplace. Knowing that production and consumption processes target children and families through advertisements, through their marketing strategies, we should know then and reflect on what kind of futures do we want for children and their families. When we think of sustainable futures, it is almost always automatic that we examine economic and environmental pillars of dimensions for solutions. But we can think of sustainability in other ways, and this has been an effort of Andrew Thatcher to examine different models of sustainable development, particularly relating to human factors and ergonomics. His paper includes some of these models on the screen right now. One of the earlier models would be the pillars of sustainability, which is easy enough to visualize. Some models look at levels of economics, ecology, politics, and culture in a certain context or country, such as the efforts of Circles of Sustainability.org. Personally, I like the overlapping circles models because it represents relationships across and between the elements. It also reminds us that the pillar that we may be also that there's a pillar or there's an element that we may be sometimes be taking for granted, and that is the social pillar. And we can talk about SDG 12 on its own. We can talk about SDG 1 on its own. And we can offer many ideas that we have been pushing forth for the past decades. But to be able to dream of sustainable futures for children and their families, we have to think of SDGs and our approaches to solutions as overlapping circles. We want futures that contribute to social and cultural sustainability. And I propose that we manage that through intergenerational and multidisciplinary approaches. We want intentional, relational, intergenerational, and multidisciplinary futures for children and families. As I've said, we want overlapping circles, not disjointed societies. We want futures where there are dialogues, collaborative explorations, building shared knowledge and cultures. We want inclusive futures where we can all participate and where all voices are heard. Over the recent decades, there has been a growing body of literature describing the growing age separation within societies. Due to advances in technology, older adults are living longer but are more prone to being socially isolated. On the other hand, younger children in some countries have been found to have little opportunity to interact with older adults, primarily because of economic reasons and migration within and outside countries. This pattern of increasing age segregation has been linked to the decline in life satisfaction among older adults and the increase in negative stereotypes towards the aged and aging among younger people. And this is something that intergenerational programs are aiming to address. These are intentional initiatives of bringing different generations together to interact. Through their interactions, they have dialogues where cultures, values, and knowledge are passed on. These interactions allow them to explore mediating materials, artifacts, and environments collaboratively. On this note, I would like to point out that we have to acknowledge that while older adults have cumulative cultures and knowledge and abilities and capabilities that they could pass on to younger generations, young children, the young generation also have their own voices, capabilities, and abilities from which older adults can also gain from. And this is something that sometimes we overlook, but their voices should also be heard because this involves things that matter to them. It also it is also noteworthy that in the General Assembly Resolution of 73-1424, adopted in December 17, 2018, it is explicitly stated that UN member states are encouraged to invest in inclusive, family-oriented policies and programs, including early childhood uh, development and education towards advancing social integration and intergenerational solidarity to support the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Intergenerational solidarity is needed to achieve several, if not all, UN Sustainable Development Goals. Some of these goals that they have been very explicit about would be SDG 1, no poverty, SDG 2, zero hunger, SDG 3, good health and well-being, SDG 4, quality education, SDG 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Through intentional intergenerational interactions, children and older adults share knowledge that would help better designs and systems than what we currently have. This is an acknowledgement that different generations grew up in times where artifacts, materials, and practices may have been different. Toys, playgrounds, foods, crafts, materials, these are some topics among many others where generations could learn from each other. I pose a challenge for the Department of Family Life and Child Development to contribute to the discourse of social and cultural sustainability and have more intentional initiatives for interactions and building relations by developing research and pedagogical practices that balance sustainability concepts with the tenets of the UN Convention of the Rights of the Child. I challenge FLCD to feature children's perspectives on issues that affect them in future research and publication. I also plan to contribute my research through my research project. What you see on the screen is a framework that I am working on for a forthcoming publication on understanding intergenerational programs within family and early childhood institutions within a cultural historical lens. If it will help the cause, I will gladly share this with you. But I do ask for understanding because this is something, it is a work in progress. And this model is something that I could share for educational purposes, but will share further once it is published. To the academe and to Che, I pose the challenge of having multidisciplinary processes for research and development to conceptualize and produce products and services. We should be doing research together and sharing knowledge between and across disciplines. We are already doing that within the College of Home Economics, but we should now be having more dialogues and collaborations with other sciences and disciplines. We want shared knowledge for conceptualizing, designing, producing, and having resources within and across disciplines. And this is sustainability by design. We should be talking with engineering for toy designs, apps, games, programs, for policies that are being conceptualized not just by one entity or one single entity for a single purpose alone and a single age group. We should be collaborating with the law and public governance to have policies that are written up with futures that we want. We should be cooperating with allied medical professions for designs that would encourage togetherness of younger and older generations in healthy and empowering environments. We should be talking to the field of business to ensure that our resources will be multifunctional and for consumption of more than just one generation. In the end, it is not just about a single entity. It's not just about a single discipline. It's all of us working together. In conclusion, I can never stress enough that we want institutional, disciplinary, and generational overlaps as we all aim for the sustainable futures we want for ourselves, the children, their families, and the world. In the end, we should be more aware, conscious, and intentional in our system and process designs. We want multidisciplinary approaches and intergenerational solidarity to be able to promote sustainability, participation, and inclusion of not just some, but all. Together, we can make tiny tweaks leading to bigger changes as we accept the diversity of the world. Let us all continue to push together. Thank you very much for your attention. And these are just some of my references that you can refer to. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Teacher Aya, and best of luck in your studies and future endeavors. We have some recent researches on children and their family consumption roles, specifically their growing contribution in the consumption process. For example, they are now more shifting towards being mere consumers of the products that their parents buy to being influencers and gatekeepers as well. And there are also multidisciplinary efforts now in the researches in the college. For example, the clothing technology would have more influence of science and technology in their weaving techniques. So we could really have more of that. Okay, thank you very much. And those are very nice ideas. Our last speaker is a full-time work-at-home mom and a BSID graduate of batch 2008. She passed the Interior Design Board in 2008. She's a proud housewife and mom to two kids, Audrey, who is 6 years old, and Damien, who is 3 years old. She breastfed for 5 straight years and homeschooled her kids. She's the mom behind the viral cardboard box play kitchen in 2016. As a mompreneur, she single-handedly managed a home-based business, Ava's Kitchen, which she started in 2015, where one of her main products is her own invention or recipe, lactation spread, a milking pesto cream cheese made specially for breastfeeding mothers. She also has other products such as gourmet spreads, cakes in a jar, and other homemade goodies. You should visit her her side. She's been featured in Smart Parenting for her creations. We could not have a more credible speaker for today's talk on mompreneurship and homemaking during the pandemic. She will focus her talk on upcycling play materials such as the cardboard boxes and how she started her business promoting breastfeeding and nutrition for lactating mothers. It is my honor to present Ms. Rodessa Reyes.
Hi, good morning. Thank you. Ang ganda naman ng introduction. Anyway, so first of all, I would like to thank yung department namin, the Clothing, Textile, and Interior Design Department for inviting me. Kasi hindi naman na talaga ako nagpa-practice ng interior design, but despite that, nakita nila yung potential ko bilang home economist, 'di ba? So, I only have 15 minutes, medyo mahaba yung presentation ko, but I'll try to squeeze it in. So, yung topic ko ngayon, kasi 'di ba yung home economics, we're celebrating na yung 99th anniversary of home economics as a discipline. So, wait, let me just share my sorry. Yung home economics as a discipline kasi parang wait, I'll share my video. Okay. Share screen. Sorry. Hold on. There. There. 100 years ago or 99 years ago, meron ng may disiplina ng home economics. Yun lang, hindi pa siguro nila, di pa aware yung mga moms before na home economics na yon, di ba? Kasi they're just living every day, naghuhugas sila ng dishes or they're doing the household chores na, di ba? So in my talk, ayusin ko na lang, hatiin ko sa dalawa. So we're going to divided sa homemaking and mompreneurship. So for homemaking, matatouch dito yung mga sub-disciplines ng home economics as a discipline as a whole. So yung for interior design, ako kasi kahit di na ako nagpa-practice ngayong pandemic, 'di ba? Kasi nandito lang tayo sa sa bahay natin. So mas nakikita natin ngayon yung mga minor mga kailangan na i-renovate or i-repair, yung may kailangang i-repaint, 'di ba? So for me, ang mas ma-advise ko siguro is yung start natin with particular particular spot or area, like for me, kasi nga yung mga children, yung mga anak natin, di ba, nag-homeschool or may online classes. And for me, yung sa akin kasi, yung mga anak ko, they're Montessori homeschooling. So ito yung playroom nila. During the pandemic, ni-renovate ko, DIY lang. So nag-DIY ako ng renovation to fit their homeschooling needs. So ito yung before na playroom nila, and then ginawa ko na siya na parang what will fit to their needs in their homeschooling needs. Ayan. So also during kasi nga pandemic, nasa bahay lang tayo, makikita natin kung mas nagagamit natin yung mga spaces natin sa bahay. So meron tayong chance ngayon to organize kahit yung garden natin na mention kanina, yung sustainable gardening. We can also with our children, naggawa tayo ng a little outdoor space for them, kahit balcony. Kung may nasa condominium kayo, you can design the balcony para meron lang space for the children or kahit sa atin to breathe or to have some fresh air, di ba? And then also you can organize yung mga paint materials or sa kitchen, yung iba-ibang mga gamit natin. So this is what I did for my my kids' room. And then yung laundry area, like this one, kasi nga pandemic, so wala nang di na tayo nakakapagpa-laundry. Kahit yung mga specific spaces like the laundry area, we can also organize it. We can also kahit DIY renovation like this one, hindi pa namin nare-repaint, but it's better now kasi most used space naman ito dahil nga we can go outside na to do our laundry. And then also for the toys for our children, yung na-mention kanina na naging viral yung cardboard box play kitchen. I think kasi this one is sustainable yung materials na ginamit ko for this one. So let's just watch the video yung kasi it was also featured in the US.
One mother proves you don't have to spend a fortune on the latest gadgets to spark your child's imagination.
This is incredible.
The Philippines native bought her daughter a play kitchen and restaurant made completely out of recycled cardboard boxes. She used vinyl stickers to cover up the cardboard and constructed a sink out of an old baking tray. She finished the build with lots of special touches, including a custom sign and logo, as well as a toy laptop and phone so her daughter can, of course, take bookings. The before and after photos were posted on Facebook and quickly went viral. This is very cool.
It's just clever. Very clever.
I like seeing the process from start to finish. She started just the boxes and then she
Yeah.
a little detail. Yeah, there's the first
The beginning
picture.
right there.
Which, kids, they have such a great imagination. I'm sure she would have been perfectly satisfied without all the paint.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Pizzazz, but I love that she did that. This is too cute. I love all the colors. I want a real kitchen like that. That's cool. Well, and the girl's still little. She'll be able to play with it for a while, too. She'll be like 2 or 3 years old, so she has plenty of time to play with that.
Absolutely.
Okay, so yeah, naging viral yung play kitchen. 2016 pa lang yon. Kasi nga, ang naginamit ko is yung cardboard boxes and anything na makita ko lang sa bahay. And it didn't just stop with the cardboard box kitchen for my kids. Naka-inspire din siya with other moms to make the same. Kasi lalo nga yung pandemic na hindi natin priority yung bumili ng mga toys for our children, di ba? Kasi ang mas priority natin is yung health nila, yung immune system, and syempre yung basic needs natin like food and yan. So that's for toys and that's for interior design. And for for clothing and textile. So, yung mga kids ko kasi, meron na silang yung isang anak ko, he has asthma. So ngayon, yung mga moms, yung mga homemakers, mas particular na tayo sa gagamitin natin na mga damit for the children. Like ako, yung son ko nga, si Damon has asthma. So one of the triggers ng asthma niya is yung fabric. So kahit na nasa bahay lang tayo, kasi nga 'di ba yung COVID-19 medyo ina-attack yung respiratory system. So it's one way also of preventing the virus from attacking our children. Yon. And then for family life and child development, na-mention na to nung previous speaker. So maraming I think ngayon yung mga problem ng mga homemakers, most especially yung mga may mga anak na school age, parang ang hirap daw ng online schooling, nahirapan sila kasi mahirap naman talaga as a mom, kaya lang marami din naman tayong option, like merong online classes, may modular classes, merong homeschooling, yon. So I guess kailangan lang dito is tingnan natin yung mga anak natin, like kung ano ba yung mas okay sa kanila. Like for me, mas nag-work yung homeschooling kasi nung nag-try ng online classes yung anak ko, tinulugan lang niya. So yun, even if others are doing yung kunyari online classes, but if your children are not comfortable with it or if it won't fit your schedule, I think mas importante pa rin to follow your child or to follow or observe the cues from your child kung alin yung mas mag-work sa kanila. So yan. So we're doing Montessori homeschooling at home. So pwede kaming lumabas sa garden, dun kami nag-homeschool or dun kami nag-aaral or any place in our house, yun. And more importantly, dahil nga nasa bahay lang yung mga anak natin, it is stressful enough na for them na hindi sila makalabas and na at their young age, hindi pa nila masyadong maintindihan yung situation, di ba? Ang naintindihan lang nila, they're limited, their movements are limited at home. So why ngayon ang ginagawa namin sa bahay is to incorporate more practical life activities which I think is more sustainable pag lumaki na sila kasi syempre practical life mas magagamit nila, like yan, etong 3-year-old ko nag-help na siya sa laundry, they do baking, they do gardening, di ba? Yung you can also include your children sa urban gardening like yung na-mention kanina, and also yung organizing pwede na rin sila. We can also include our children there. So let me move na to the mompreneurship part of my talk. So eto, I think maraming interested dito sa pagiging mompreneurship kasi we are more than thinking about the virus. Maraming nawalan ng trabaho, maraming nawalan ng income. So I think dahil naka-confine tayo sa bahay, ang iniisip natin, hindi na tayo makaka-work, di ba? Kasi nasa bahay lang tayo. But then there's more opportunities at home compared to 99 years ago, di ba? Dahil wala namang technology pa, wala pang online selling, wala pang mga social media platforms before. So ngayon, mas marami na tayong options, lalo na home economics per se is a very diverse marami siyang sub-disciplines, di ba? So but we can start with like yung sa akin, I ventured into the food business. I made spreads 5 years ago, yung lactation spread. So ito siya. So yung lactation spread, nag-start yon for personal consumption ko lang until shinare ko siya sa mga friends ko and they liked it and it worked for them. And then sabi nila, why not sell it? So ganun din yung pwedeng mangyari during the pandemic. It doesn't have to be a spread or pwedeng bagoong lang or whatever you're good at, whatever you can do at home, pwede niyong gawin. Yun siya. So for me, yung lactation spread nga, ginawa ko siya for my personal consumption kasi I needed a snack, quick snack kasi nga pag breastfeeding ka, every 2 hours, gutom ka. So, iba yung hunger for pag nagbe-breastfeed. And I needed to make a quick snack. So, naisip ko, bread, di ba? Kasi kahit isang kamay lang pwede na ako mag-snack. And I improved on the spread. Over the years, nag-aral ako nung medyo sumikat na siya, medyo nadalaman na through word of mouth. Nag-aral na ako ng breastfeeding classes, lactation classes, spread making classes, just so I can improve on the spread. Kasi nga, nakita ko yung potential na sustainable yung product because merong target community, diba? Kasi for food science and nutrition, mas maganda if meron kang you can cover the community nutrition. In my case, yung community of the breastfeeding moms. And what's more sustainable about the product is yung it doesn't only nourish yung moms kasi when the moms take the lactation spread, magbuboost yung milk supply nila, which in turn will be a more productive product kasi they'll be producing milk for their babies, diba? Which is I think more sustainable kasi right now during the pandemic mas kailangan ng mga babies na maboost yung immune system nila, and what better food to give them but breast milk, diba? Sabi nga parang overrated na breast milk is best for babies, but it is really the best for babies, yun siya. So from nung nag-start ako na home-based lang, ako lang mag-isa talaga from sales, marketing, production, purchasing, accounting, hanggang delivery nga, minsan ako pa rin mag-isa yung nagde-deliver. Doon ako nag-start, one mom team lang. But then, nung nakilala na nga, I had to hire more staff. I need to expand. So from 2015, I started Ava's Kitchen. Natutuwa na ako with 10 to 15 jars na order kasi parang feeling ko, stay-at-home mom lang ako nagbe-breastfeed lang ako, wala kaming yaya, wala kaming kasambahay. So sabi ko, okay na yun, masaya na ako. So from 10 to 15 jars per week, ngayon sa production namin, 300 to 500 jars na kami per week ng lactation spreads and gourmet spreads combined. Ito yung pesto cream cheese. That's the first flavor na ginawa ko. Yan yung una. And then until I studied yung mga classes. So now we have 12 flavors na of the lactation spread, which I think will be sustainable over the years kasi nga it's been known, and yun nga yung effect niya, it's not just for food lang siya nakakainin, may effect siya, and that will benefit even the babies, di ba? So yan, and also we made organic malunggay pesto na mention kanina, 'di ba, yung sustainable food, kung ano yung ingredients na gagamitin. So yan siya. And then we expanded na to gourmet spread. And for HRIM naman na side ng discipline, wala akong hotel, wala rin akong restaurant, but I joined bazaars. And recently, dahil nga dun sa pandemic, we had to get na commissary or a kitchen where the spreads will be produced. This is in Quezon City also. And ayun, mas okay na ngayon dahil yung kitchen staff nandun, mas mabilis yung mga pick-ups and mas mabilis yung mga transactions kasi ngayon talagang pandemic, ang dami, 'di ba? Ang daming mga quarantine-borne food like yung sushi bake, 'di ba? Yung mga baked sushi, ube pandesal, 'di ba? Yung mga ganyan. So, I think if you're planning to be a mompreneur, practical side of the whole seminar siguro, if you want to be a mompreneur, whether it's in gardening, in food, or in crafts, pwede yun. I think it's important na tingnan natin kung yung kailangan meron kang target na community, 'di ba? Community nutrition siya. And I think as a whole, yung home economics nga, na-touch ko naman lahat ng sub-disciplines nila. Kaya, yan. That's it. And we can entertain questions later siguro.
Thank you. Thank you, Ma'am Rodessa Reyes. Ayan. So, I would like to commend the HRIM department for coordinating all of these topics. I agree with Dr. Lizada in her comment that these talks should trigger discussion and actions that take advantage really of the multidisciplinary strength in CHE to effectively influence strategic approaches to sustainable food production and consumption. So that was from Dr. Lizada, and I fully agree with that. And also, probably for the mompreneurship, there would be more assistance, for example, from the Food and Nutrition Department regarding food safety, because these home entrepreneurs were not really trained on food sanitary practices, diba? Okay, so thank you very much, and I'll pass on the floor to Ma'am Lilibeth Bailosis for the Q&A portion.
Thank you very much, Masters. Maraming salamat po sa napakamakabuluhang pagtalakay kung paano isusulong ang SDG 12. We will now proceed to the Q&A portion. We have several from our webinarians and webinatics from the different platforms, Zoom, YouTube. We have live streaming tayo sa CHE Lobby at meron din tayo sa Facebook. Some of these questions were already answered by our masters, Ms. Chit Wan and Mr. Dave Ang. Thank you, Professor Emeritus Connie Lizada and Ms. Alison Hije for your earlier questions. I will read another question from the Q&A box. Let me read the question. Okay, so this is from Dr. Emeritus Connie Lizada. Dr. Villarino, congratulations for the presentation, including disposal as part of the food supply chain in relation to switching to a predominantly plant-based diet. CHE is in a unique position to adopt a two-pronged approach to this switch. While technological innovation are guided by better defined principles influencing consumer acceptability and preferences, is a more tortuous path. The question is, do we have in place in the college a multidisciplinary program to define strategies for the latter? This is directed to Dr. Villarino.
Hi, Ma'am Beth. Yeah, I actually answered that particular question of Dr. Lizada. So I commented that I thanked her for the comments, but at the moment, we don't have any multidisciplinary program to even discuss, or we haven't even talked about it as a college. So I presented plant-based diets in some of my, well, I started presenting plant-based diets in when I delivered my Sharka professorial chair grant, but there are no discussions at all in terms of pursuing plant-based diets or even programs covering plant-based diets. So I think it's high time that we actually consider having programs in terms of how we can pursue plant-based diets or promote plant-based diets.
Thank you very much, Dr. Villarino. We have another question for Mr. Dave Ang from Anonymous Attendee. Mr. Dave Ang, any suggested places or sites where we can buy materials to start our own urban garden? What's a good starter plant?
So for suggested places and sites, it will depend on where you're located. So if I'm at QC, I would go to QC Circle and or sa White Plains. But if I'm at Pasay, I would usually go to Cartimar. But then when it comes to soil and fertilizers, I have my own bin at home and I produce them myself. And for starter plants, if you want to start with ornamentals, you can actually start with pothos plants or pothos, monsteras, snake plants. Those are easy to grow plants. And then for produce naman, I would suggest herbs. So let's say basil, thyme, corianders. Like they are plants that are easy to grow. Ayan.
So thank you very much, Mr. Ang. Now this question is directed to everybody. Can you tell our students, reps, or faculty and guests your specific or most urgent call of actions on the promotion of SDG 12? Anybody can start to answer.
I can start. This is Chitwan. I think my call to action would be to know where your food comes from, because that way then we ensure traceability. And if you know where your food comes from, then that circular economy that was discussed will be a possibility. So inquire. Consumers must be curious to know who grew their food. You know that farmers save the organic for themselves, and the one with pesticide is sent to us consumers because consumers want perfect vegetables. So if the consumer changes the requirement for, even ugly vegetables to be bought, then farmers will be encouraged not to use pesticides.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chitwan. Ms. Villarino?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before. First is probably, well, for me, the most important thing is the shift in our diets. So, Filipino diets as presented by FNRI is mostly meat, poultry, and then of course carbs. But if we just shift our diets into more healthier alternatives, it doesn't have to be, hindi mo kailangan tanggalin yung meat. Okay, well, for me, personally, I don't think it's really sustainable to totally take out meat from our diet, because meat presents nutrients that are not available in a plant-based diet. So probably that shift to healthier diets, and the siguro yung pagbawas natin ng food waste, because that is really a tremendous problem, not only in terms of the economic implication of food waste, but more so the environmental impact of food waste. So yun yung aking call to action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Villarino. Ma'am Zarica.
Good morning, everybody. To me po, the call to action would be mostly on the social and cultural side of consumption and production, because we sometimes forget that we are consuming services, and we are not just consuming products, we are also consuming services. For example, there's a lot of services that we might not be able to sustain anymore if we don't pass it on to the next generation. Case in point would be the traditional tattoo art in Benguet and in other parts of the countries. That is something that we are consuming and is actually being promoted as part and parcel of tourism strategies. And Filipino games, the practices and traditions of our agriculture and fishing. These are things that we sometimes tend to forget, but it's essential part. It's an essential part of the cycle of production and consumption. So to me, it's really making sure that we are connecting with the people who know the art. And it's really not just the older adults or the older generations that have to do the transfer of knowledge from older to younger. It's also the younger generations letting letting the older generations know of the new technologies. How can we sustain, for example, the art of weaving Filipino fabric in a more sustainable way, and using the older adults' knowledge and the younger generation's knowledge of technology. So to me, it's really something that I would like to push for. And that's my call to action. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teacher Aya. Sir Dave?
Yeah. My call to action would be being conscious of what we buy and consume, as well as what we do, because of course we want something that is self-sufficient while using less resources, right? So while some might think it's not a big gesture or it might be difficult, a small one is still a step forward in having a sustainable future for everyone, especially for the future generations.
Thank you. Baby step talaga sa ating youngest master. Ma'am Dessa?
Hi. Yeah, siguro for me as a mom and a homemaker, yung call to action ko is really to discover the different disciplines of home economics, kasi kung nasa bahay nga, 'di ba? Marami ka ring pwedeng gawin. And maybe siguro more let's be more conscious homemakers, kasi from the little things like yung garbage separation, disposal, pwede na 'yon, 'di ba? Or the food that we put in our table, in our family's table, you can also be more conscious about it, more healthy options for our children. And siguro for yun nga, kung we have smaller kids, we'll be more conscious about how they will be raised. And for mompreneurs naman, it doesn't just have to be about selling or making a living out of what you are doing, diba? It has to be something that would benefit the community, that would be sustainable in the future.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Dessa. We have another question for you. Can the water-damaged carton be saved and used for upcycling? Alam niyo naman, laging may typhoon. How can we do that? Ma'am Dessa?
Yeah, for yung cardboard box kitchen ba? Hello?
Yes, ma'am. The one
Yes,
that are water damaged. After the typhoon, we have wet cartons. Can we use that for upcycling?
Yes, yung ginawa ko nga with the cardboard box kitchen. Actually, na-outgrow na nung kids ko yung cardboard box play kitchen. And we did not just dispose it. We gave it to another family with smaller kids na ginamit nila. And I believe yung mga cardboard boxes, you can also recycle it. Yung iba ginagamit nga yun for compost, right, Dave? Pwede rin siyang i-include yung mga small of cardboard boxes sa compost, or you can upcycle it, pwedeng gawing storage, or marami. Like for me, ginawa ko rin siyang toy car for my kids. Ginawa ko rin siyang parang workbench, cardboard box workbench for my other family members.
Okay, so that is also supporting yung paggagawa ng compost, supporting Sir Dave at saka sa Miss Chitwan. Okay, so we are running out of We are running out of time. Should you have more questions directed to our masters, you may email your questions to the department. Our email address is bhrim.updiliman@up.edu.ph, and we will forward your questions to our masters. Back to you, moderators.
Yeah, thank you very much. And then to properly thank our resource speakers for gracing our anniversary celebration, we will be presenting the certificates of appreciation. We'd like to request our Dean Shirley Guevara, and the chair of the lead department for our anniversary celebration, Dr. May Antomanan, to also turn on their
Okay,
video
thank you.
camera. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Let me read the citation. The certificate of appreciation is presented to our 5 speakers for their generous sharing of knowledge as resource speaker in celebration of the 99th anniversary of home economics as a discipline in the webinar Learning from the Masters, Multi-Disciplinary Perspectives on SDG 12, Responsible Consumption and Production, given this 9th day of November 2020, signed by Dr. Mary Ann Tomanan and Dr. Shirley P. Guevara, our Dean of the College of Home Economics. So we are presenting this to Ms. Pasita Chitwan, Mr. Dave Louis Ang,
Thank you.
You.
Professor Kashana Blanca Villarino, Ma'am Sarika Oropilia, Teacher Aya, and Miss Rodessa Reyes.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now I give the floor to Mark.
Hello everyone. It's me again. So thank you all speakers for all your insights, invaluable information, and for taking your time to give us a lecture for everyone here. And now to formally close the event, I would like to call on the Dean of the College of Home Economics, um, Dr. Shirley Guevara, for the closing remarks.
Maraming salamat, Mark. Magandang tanghali na po. No? Kanina, good morning pa yung nasa isip ko, but magandang tanghali na po sa inyong lahat. Let me greet our esteemed masters, our professors for a day. Our Professor Emeritus Tony Lizada, our Assistant Vice President for Academic Affairs, Dr. Mary Delia Tomacruz, Vice Chancellor for Planning and Development, Dr. Raquel Florendo, our former deans, Dr. Demi Bonga, who tried to watch YouTube, Dr. Delaida Mayo, and Dr. Maria Lourdes Catral. Also to UP President of HEAA, Dr. Eleanor Malikdem, and the Board of Directors, our retired faculty members, members of the College Executive Board, our faculty members, our dear staff and students, the officers, members, and alumni of our Society of Hotel and Restaurant Association for Progress. And of course, I would like to commend them for being our co-organizer for this year's celebration. I would also like to greet the CHE Student Council, our alumni and guests. Thank you for joining us virtually in our celebration of the 99th year of home economics as a discipline in the University of the Philippines. I'd like to extend my sincere gratitude to our resource persons, our masters, for their gift of time and expertise. You know that this year's anniversary theme, responsible production and consumption, culminates our past celebrations using themes called from the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals under former Dean Aurorita Roldan. These are SDG 2, Zero Hunger, SDG 4, Quality Education,
SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, and of course, SDG 12, Responsible Production and Consumption. These SDGs align with the advocacies of the college. We are doubly thankful to our learning masters for their contribution to these advocacies. I agree with Dr. Villarino that it is high time for us to start discussing initiatives and focus more projects toward the realization of these SDGs. Nainggit ako kay Dave and Ms. Rodessa for being able to come up with worthy activities even during the lockdown. May green thumb kasi ako kaso wala kaming lugar dito sa bahay. Everything revolves now around the family, like healthy eating, which was also articulated by teacher Aya and Dr. Villarino. I sent a private message to Miss Cheat a while ago that I want to join the Pangasinan chapter of the slow movement when things improve, because I dabble on food and culture. May mga research ako on food and culture. So I commend her for her initiative to put up the slow movement. At this point, I'd like to congratulate the lead organizing department, my department, the Department of Hotel, Restaurant, and Institution Management, under Dr. Mary Ann Tumanan, and the officers and members of the Society of Hotel and Restaurant Association for Progress, headed by Mr. Mark Emilio. The departments for inviting the resource persons, our very dynamic masters of ceremony, Assistant Professor Lisa Guggenheim and Dr. Joan Banpang. The Computer Center, ang aming partner, no, lagi. And all of those who have expended so much time and effort to make this celebration a success. Sa panghuli, gusto ko kayong imbitahin lahat sa November 2021 para sa selebrasyon ng ating ika-100 taon ng ekonomiyang pantahanan bilang disiplina sa Universidad ng Pilipinas. Sa awan ng poong may kapal, sana magkita-kita tayong muli next year at mag-ingat po tayong palagi, mahal kong CHC family. Maraming salamat.
Thank you po, Dean, for those words. And thank you rin for everyone who's part of the team and everyone who attended. So let me just remind everyone to answer the evaluation forms for the webinar. So it's tinyurl.com/THE99eval. So please fill it out so that we could improve on, so we could know what we need to improve on. So again, on behalf of UP Sharp, on behalf of the Department of HRIM, and on behalf of the College of Economics, thank you for everyone who attended. Thank you to the speakers who gave their time and their effort to give a very insightful lecture for today. So have a good day and God bless. Bye, everyone.
We shall just be waving. Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye. Okay, so we will end it now. Wala na tayong photo op ha? Wala na ba? Okay, wala na daw. All right. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.